Good afternoon. We meet today on this International Conscientious Objectors Day to commemorate and celebrate the women and men today and of history who have been compelled by humanitarian, political, and religious reasons to resist the call to militarism and have dared to stand up for peace. Our gathering online at this very moment takes us around the nations, and we're grateful to contributions from Scotland, England, Israel, and Colombia. Some moments, such as our commemoration stone in Tavistock Square, will be live. Others, such as some of the testimonies and songs shared, have been pre-recorded. Throughout the whole spread, we hope we'll laugh, cry, reflect, and be energized together. This year, we meet online. We stream it. We encourage you all to use the YouTube channel chat or to go onto the co-day.org webpage and join the chat there. Or maybe if you've got social media open, use the hashtag CODay2021, spelt out 2021 in numbers, to share your thoughts, maybe your personal story, or photographs or memories of people in your family or elsewhere who have been conscientious objectors who have spoken up for peace. It is great to know that already we've got people not just from around the UK, but the USA joining in. I'm sure we'll be joined by friends from around the world. Many people around the world are active for peace today. We meet knowing that the situation in Gaza and those endless images of suffering and violence are live in our minds. And just to note, our contributions with a song and a testimony from Israel were filmed before the latest outrages began. So rest assured that while not mentioned, we can be convinced that the people who talk about that situation are doing what they can for peace today. So that's us. We're gathered. Let's go and sit with Penny Stone, song leader, teacher, singer, and composer, who will bring us some opening thoughts and a song.
As someone who's never been put in the position to have to choose whether to conscientiously object to military service, it's absolute awe that I look to and listen to the voices of COs around the world. It's we can underestimate just how strong the environmental pressures, the cultural pressures, the social pressures are, and we grow up with the narratives that we're told. So, spending time in Palestine and listening to voices of the Israeli conscientious objectors and knowing what strong othering happens, as it happens in our own country as well, that we other so many people. It's truly inspiring to see the independent thinking that comes from young people choosing to be COs, and for me, what that is about seeing the human. As once we see the humanness in each other, how can we choose to fight each other? So I'm going to sing this song for you today, which is about the humanness of Palestinians and lots of creative direct action that happens in opposition to governments and occupations and wars the world over. These creative acts cause us to see people as human who perhaps have been dehumanized by the regimes that we live in ourselves. So this is one of the most inspiring for me. It was when a lot of kids along the Gaza Strip, along the beach bit of the Gaza Strip, made kites and flew them, and they broke the world record for the most number of kites flown in the sky at the same time, which is just such a beautiful human image, is lots of kids being able to do this. And of course it needed the support of adults in this case, clearing the shells of bullet casings off the beach, and it wasn't as safe as perhaps it looked for us in the pictures, but it was a huge act of humanness. It just said, hello, we're kids, and that's it. That's why people are refusing to fight, is because we hurt other humans, we hurt other adults, we hurt other kids, and it's just not worth it. None of it's worth it. In Gaza City, Palestine, just a standing soldiers sitting in the sea, and bombs are falling down on me, and there's no place to hide. My home isn't even safe inside. Nowhere to run, to play, where I can be a child. Just for 1 minute, just an hour of my troubled days, let this flying kite take back the sky for me. This kite that's flying over me, seeing things that I can see, saying all the things that I would say if I could leave this place. No walls could stop me dreaming, no lies could lock me down. All the words in all the world couldn't stop me from roaming around. Just for 1 minute, just an hour of my troubled days, let this flying kite take back the sky for me. This kite that's flying over me is just paper, string and wood, and a picture that I painted, and I hope it's understood. Will you carry all my dreaming up towards the sun? Will you show the world that freedom means the same to everyone? Just for 1 minute, just an hour of my troubled days, let this flying kite take back the sky for me. All it needs is the right wind blowing, just one breath from the sea. And where bombs and bullets have been falling, I send my kite soaring. It may seem a simple thing, just holding on to a piece of string, but don't forget I've been holding on for all of my short years, and my mother and my father held on long before my time. Just for 1 minute, just an hour of my troubled days, let this flying kite take back the sky for me. Just for 1 minute, just an hour of my troubled days, let this flying kite take back the sky for me.
Thank you, Penny. A powerful and hopeful image of a kite dancing in the sky. Central to Penny choosing that song was her own personal experience. And it's people's personal experiences and stories that shape so much of who each of us are, so much of what we do. And all of those somehow seem captured in that Conscientious Objectors commemorative stone erected in 1994 after 18 years hard work from Edinburgh and many others. So now we're going to go live to Tavistock Square, where Michael Mears, actor, playwright, will talk about how for him it was an immersion in the story of COs that suddenly something came alive for him.
War is illogical. That's what I wrote on my school pencil case when I was a teenager growing up in North London. My grandfather fought in the First World War, and my dad fought in the Second World War. But it seemed I'd inherited slightly different genes. I believed war is illogical from a very early age. Years later, I became an actor and a playwright, and it was about 10 years ago, with the 100-year commemorations of the First World War approaching, that I began researching conscientious objection in Britain during that war in order to write a play on the subject. So much of what I came across chimed with my own beliefs. Theodore Selwyn, conscientious objector. I sincerely believe that my attitude of refusal to take part in war is the very best service I can give to the country. Howard Martin, one of 35 conscientious objectors who were sent to France in 1916 and sentenced to death, a sentence later commuted to 10 years penal servitude. He said, "My inmost conviction is that all war is wrong, and that therefore any form of military service is incompatible with my beliefs." I performed my play in the UK, and then 3 years ago, I took it to the United States. At South Bend, Indiana, my host took me to the Basilica Church of Notre Dame University to show me something. Beneath the altar was a casket, which was purported to contain a relic of Saint Marcellus, who, my host informed me, was one of the very first conscientious objectors we know about. Marcellus was a Roman centurion in 298 AD, and it's said that one day he stood in front of the flags of his legion and made a public declaration. "I am a Christian and therefore can no longer keep the oath that I have made to serve the emperor." For this conscientious objection of his, Marcellus was sentenced to death. But we shouldn't imagine that conscientious objection is a thing of the past, that it's no longer an issue today. I'm standing here next to the Conscientious Objectors Memorial Stone in Tavistock Square, London, today being International Conscientious Objectors Day. And every May the 15th, we come together in towns and cities throughout the world. We come together in towns and cities throughout the world to remember not only those who in the past refused to kill for their country, but those who are very much alive today in many parts of the world. It's of vital importance that we remember all these conscientious objectors and do what we can to support those who at the present time are being persecuted, punished, imprisoned. During this ceremony, we'll be hearing more about present-day conscientious objectors throughout the world. During my trip to America 3 years ago, the Center on Conscience and War, or CCW, who's helped support conscientious objectors to American military service, gave me a framed statement, which I think sums up very concisely the position of COs. The statement was made by Charles Maresca, then Associate Director of the Center, in 1987. For the record, this is what conscientious objectors object to. We object to killing. We object to killing in the name of capitalism. We object to killing in the name of communism. And we object to killing in the name of religion. We object to being forced to register for war and killing, and we object to being forced to participate in the preparations for war and killing. We object to killing innocent civilians, and we object to killing soldiers. We object to nuclear weapons, and we object to conventional weapons. When war comes, many of us will perform peaceful alternative service. Many of us will go to jail rather than compromise deeply held beliefs. But we will not fight. We will not kill. Thank you.
What would you say if you were faced with those questions? Why is it inconsistent with your conscience to defend the right against evildoers? Would you not resist even if everything you value were in danger of being trodden underfoot? Why is it wrong to prevent evil from happening to someone else, to protect women and children from inhumanity? Those are just three of some of the many example questions shared with conscientious objectors in this country to help them think and reflect before being asked them in a place of tribunal. Of course, one of the main drivers of conscientious objection is when the state commands you to sign up and you discover, as Michael was describing, that your beliefs enable you to respond and reject that call. In this country, conscription, national service are words we find in the history books, and yet for many nations around the world, it's a lived reality today. So we're going to hear from Atalya, a woman in Israel who questioned her nation's military and went against her family's wishes by refusing military duty, eventually ending up in prison and so we are grateful for Sally Denosh for organizing this special video message.
Hello, my name is Atalya Ben-Abba. I'm a 23-year-old activist from Jerusalem. 5 years ago, in 2017, I refused conscription to the Israeli military. Because conscription is mandatory in Israel, I was sent to military prison where I spent 110 days. I refused to serve in the Israeli military because I chose to not take part in the Israeli oppression of the Palestinian people. I chose to become a conscientious objector because I wanted to express clearly and loudly that I will not take part in the oppression and the occupation of the Palestinian people. Taking a clear and unafraid stand against the apartheid in Israel is a rare position. Politicians and media channels demonize every person that dares to speak out against the occupation. It is seen as treacherous to stand in solidarity with the struggle of the Palestinian people. Hence, this is the exact reason it was so important to me to be loud and bold about my decision. I felt as though I had to take a personal responsibility for being on the side of the occupier. I could not just keep on living my peaceful life while these injustices are happening. Even though I was scared of being sent to military prison and of the consequences of being an outcast, I thought and still think I made the right choice. Being a conscientious objector gave me the platform to reach more people and show them that things need to change. Moreover, it allowed me to reach a hand to Palestinian partners and show them I will not take part in their oppression. I can show them I stand together with them. I believe only a joint struggle based in solidarity and connection can lead to the end of the occupation. And so, I dare to dream that through choosing to act and to see it as our responsibility to fight against injustice, we can bring an end to it.
Thank you for sharing that testimony. If you'd like to find out more about her story and some of the many people around Israel who are conscientious objectors, there's a film called Objector, which came out in 2019 and can now be seen via Vimeo on demand. It's part of a wider project by the filmmakers that works within Israeli society to explore conscientious objection, feminism, anti-militarism, and solidarity. They, alongside groups such as Breaking the Silence, are a key reminder that even in places of violence, the peacemakers exist at all moments and all stages of conflict. People's resistance to war and violence takes many different shapes. Many of you who may have been on some of the demonstrations in this country over the last few decades will no doubt have been cheered on your way by a crowd of people singing political and peaceful songs. Their wide and varied range of songs at first seem to lighten our step. And yet, if you pause to listen, you discover human emotions of joy, fear, anger. And this next song comes with a special dedication. It's brought to us by some powerful singers and helps us consider the pain of political decisions that lead to the deaths of many on the battlefield.
We chose this song, Who Do They Think They Are, for Conscientious Objectors Day because of its strong anti-war message and because it applies to any situation in which politicians resort to a military response instead of seeking a real solution. The lyrics were written for the choir in March 2003 by Cynthia Coburn to express her outrage at the start of the Iraq War. Cynthia was a key member of Raise Voices for 25 years until her death in 2019, and we miss her.
Who do they think they are? These men in suits who posture and proclaim, who speak of justice while they kill and maim, and have the gall to say they do it in my name. Who do they think they are? Who do they think they are? These men in wig and gown who read the laws, interpret instrument and code and clause, so as to justify the politicians' wars. Who do they think they are? Who do they think they are? These men with their technology of dread that grinds the world to dust beneath its tread. They only count their own among the toll of dead. Who do they think they are? Lost in their fantasy, so far removed from my reality, I long to call them back to sweet humanity.
Thank you, Raised Voices, for that call and reminder of sweet humanity. It's one that's heard in many different nations. It's one that's found in fellowships, both religious, political, and humanitarian, that keep people together. Remind us we're not the only peacemaker, that enable us to uphold each other in times of war and in times of peace. We encourage you to keep using the hashtag CODay2021 to keep the conversation going, to share your thoughts, your stories, the people you're thinking about. And it's good to see the YouTube chat busy, not just with inspiring people like Donald Sanders, whose story many of us heard last year, but also people such as Angie Alport and many others who are active for peace today. It's a reminder that we all have our part to play. War Resisters International is one of the major organisations that is networked to support conscientious objectors. They help us all focus our attention into action on this International Conscientious Objectors Day, and they amplify the voices of those who are oppressed for standing up for peace. And so now we travel to Colombia to meet Natalia García Cortés, who's going to update us on just some of the work that they're currently involved in, and this year's focus of all of our attention on CO Day.
Hello everyone, I'm Natalia and I'm from War Sisters International. First, I would like to thank all the groups for the invitation to speak at this event on International Conscientious Objection Day. We are glad that we can share with all of you the work we do at WRI regarding conscientious objection, the right to refuse to kill, and our call for action and solidarity this year on Conscientious Objection Day. I can start telling you briefly what War Sisters International is, in case this is the first time you hear about us. War Sisters International is a global network of anti-militarist and pacifist organizations and individuals committed to the removal of all war causes. And currently we run 3 programs: the Non-Violence Program, the Right to Refuse to Kill Program, and the Countering of Militarization of Youth Program. Since WRI's foundation in 1921, conscientious objection has been at the core of WRI's work, and in fact WRI was founded by conscientious objectors and other activists after World War I. WRI's Right to Refuse to Kill program take a broad definition of conscientious objection, so we include declared objectors, total objectors, but also deserters, non-declared draft avoiders, and refugees fleeing recruitment. We approach conscientious objection from a human rights perspective, but also we believe that conscientious objection is a non-violent strategy for resistance to war and militarism. The Right to Refuse to Kill program intends to support conscientious objectors around the world in different ways. We directly support CEOs and CEO movements. We organize actions of solidarity, including International Conscientious Objection Day, Prisoners for Peace Day, and CEO alerts, which are letters we encourage our network and allies to send to show solidarity with conscientious objectors that are in prison or were irregularly recruited, and to pressure the authorities to release them. We try to bring campaigners together, in the past in international conferences and physical events, and more recently through webinars and online events. And finally, we publicize information on conscientious objection and conscription through our newsletters, booklets, and books as well. We know that we don't only need the recognition of the right of conscientious objection or the elimination of conscription. In the last 5 years or so, a number of countries have reintroduced it or have plans to do so. Also, in some countries, armies are trying to recruit young people in schools or through online platforms. And also, we have known about some countries that are proposing the introduction of compulsory military service for women, arguing gender equality. So there are many issues around conscientious objection that are also important to address. But getting back to what I mentioned before, one of the ways we support conscientious objectors around the world is actions of solidarity. And every year we take the International Conscientious Objection Day as an opportunity to organize solidarity around conscientious objection to military service among general public and human rights activists. Sometimes during this day we focus on a specific country. In 2018 our focus was South Korea, where there were many CEOs imprisoned, and that same year the Constitutional Court recognized conscientious objection to military service. In 2020 we highlighted the situation of conscientious objectors that were seeking asylum, and this year we are focusing on Turkey and working closely with the Conscientious Objection Association in Turkey. In Turkey, the right to conscientious objection to military service isn't recognized, and there are thousands of conscientious objectors who refuse to perform compulsory military service. But anyone refusing compulsory military service faces lifetime persecution, including continuous arrest warrants and repeated prosecutions, and also civil death. A term being used to describe their exclusion from social, cultural, and economic life. There are a couple of resources that you can check if you want to find more information on the situation of conscientious objectors in Turkey, and also a link from our website where you can find our call out for solidarity with conscientious objectors in Turkey and some actions you can take to support them. We think that conscription is one of the most visible forms of militarism, and that's why we see conscientious objection as an important first step to challenge it. Usually groups and movements that start campaigning for the recognition of conscientious objection in their countries continue challenging militarism in other forms. So let's continue supporting CEOs around the world and showing solidarity with those who refuse to take up arms. Thank you again for the invitation, and I hope you have a very inspiring evening today.
Thank you, Natalia, for that inspiring message. And for those following in the YouTube or CO-Day website chat, I've pasted the link from War Resisters International, which has all of the information you need to take up their call to action to contact Turkey and stand up for the rights of people there who speak for peace. It's great to know that close to 150 people are gathered online right now, chatting, standing, sharing stories and memories. But it's not the only way we have gathered. There's a gathering later in Leicester. Our friends, the Anglican Pacifist Fellowship, will also hold a service tonight. But before today, we've had people sit down and record moments, memories, and poems about why this day matters. So we're going to travel to England and Scotland for some time to celebrate the peacemaker.
Here we are in Princess Street Gardens in Edinburgh, just beneath the castle, as you can see, at the spot where the memorial to conscientious objectors and all who oppose wars will be. We're surrounded by all these beautiful trees and numerous war memorials. So this is the spot where will be the memorial to conscientious objectors. It's going to be a bronze peace tree modeled on the handkerchief tree and hung with these lovely embroidered handkerchiefs, each with a symbol of one organization or individual representing all those who oppose wars and are working to build peace in the world. And so we're just going to hang them on the memorial, on the post. And I'd like to invite Brad Oliver from Veterans for Peace to say a few words.
My name's Brad Oliver. I'm Scottish representative of Veterans for Peace UK. Veterans for Peace is not a pacifist organisation, but we pay respect to the conscientious objectors in the past, many of whom were medics and stretcher bearers, etc. I personally was in the army. I would be classed as by the UN as a child soldier. I joined up when I was 16, and as Brian says, all around this gardens is remnants or memorials of the past which was dotted by war. War is the greatest threat to the existence of humanity, I think, because as resources get scarcer and scarcer, the American forces, services is the sixth greatest polluter in the world. So if your armed forces are the sixth greatest polluter in the world, another example is India just now. They're able to build nuclear weapons and have a war with Pakistan, but they can't get enough oxygen or hospital beds for the population. So that shows you the money spent on war is ridiculous and it's obscenity. And I just pay homage to the guys that were strong enough to stand up against it. Okay, thanks very much.
The WILF stands for the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. It was started at the start of the First World War. Originally it was just the Women's International League, and then later the words for peace and freedom were added. But the original banner says Women's International League, and very bravely people went to try and stop the First World War, try and argue with the men who were pursuing the war, trying to get it stopped. They didn't succeed in that aim, but they certainly did succeed in building an organisation that has lasted for over 100 years.
During the First World War, Brighton Quakers were involved in conscientious objection, although 6 Quakers did actually join up and enlist in the armed forces, but 10 chose to be conscientious objectors. From the earliest days of the war, many Friends felt called to offer service that would be compatible with the Quaker peace testimony. A call for young Friends to volunteer was published in the Friend Quaker magazine on the 21st of August 1914, and a training camp was quickly established at Jordan's in Buckinghamshire, the home of 2 conscientious objectors. About 60 young Friends assembled to prepare for active service.
Looking at Leonard Devereux, who was a member at this meeting during the First World War, he got his papers to be called up and went through the process and eventually went on to the tribunal, and he was granted status, conscientious objector status. He joined the Friends Ambulance Unit. There were 16,000 men, conscientious objectors. Some chose to do medical on the front line. It wasn't as though they were sort of, working in a clinic. Back here, they were literally, some were working on the ambulance trains, which were specially converted trains that were turned into operating theatres, wards, and they ferried the injured.
My dad went to tribunal and they didn't accept that he was genuine, so he ended up being called up to a non-combatant unit, and he refused to obey orders to put on uniform, so he ended up in prison, military prison. Basically the situation was if they could get 3 months prison sentence, they could then go back to the tribunal. So he was in prison twice, for a month and then 3 months. And then the second time they accepted he was genuine. He worked on the land for the rest of the war. So he was a Christian pacifist, he was a Methodist.
This is an article from May of 1940, and it's when my father successfully managed to get himself out of prison and given the exemption as a conscientious objector. He and my mother both had been conscientious protectors of children who were brought out of Germany by the Kindertransport, and they set up a school, and they also tried to find homes in families for the Jewish kids that were being brought out really from as early as 1934.
The extraordinary thing is that the men who did this were putting themselves probably at equal danger as the actual soldiers.
Oh, we've got a great banner that says from conscientious objection to conscientious protection.
Because we want to address the past as well as the future. There are always people who are conscientiously objecting. Many countries come to mind, don't they? And the protectors, because to address the climate change and people who are involved in the climate change movement.
It's not just a negative thing, is it? You don't just want to object, you want to offer something positive in the sort of instead.
And really I work with XR Peace as a conscientious protector or an earth protector, and have been involved really since Greenham Common in non-violent direct action, and I see that really as a way that women have really taken forward, very actively preventing war.
Conscientious protector is a term devised by the late barrister Polly Higgins as part of a wider campaign for an international law against ecocide, which could be the fifth crime against peace at the International Criminal Court, and ecocide is the destruction of the environment. So, as part of that campaign, it's possible to sign up to the Earth Protectors Trust Fund, which Polly created, and then you sign a declaration of conscience, which can be used in court. And we've just had really good news, actually, that activists who have used it in court have been acquitted by a jury. So this is just proving that there's missing law. It's also a great victory for people power. I would love to read for you, actually. Yeah, the declaration itself. Becoming a trustee of this document is to become an earth protector and trustee of earth. It is a declaration of love and acknowledgement that the earth, the ecosystems of the earth and the inhabitants of the earth, whether human or otherwise, have the right to peaceful enjoyment. It is a direct expression of intent to create peace between all beings.
I think the Quaker view is very much that peace is not a passive thing at all, it's an active engagement, and engaging with the causes of war is part of dealing with waging peace, as you might say.
Suicide in the Trenches by Siegfried Sassoon. I knew a simple soldier boy who grinned at life in empty joy, slept soundly through the lonesome dark, and whistled early with the lark. In winter trenches, cowed and glum, with crumps and lice and lack of rum, he put a bullet through his brain. No one spoke of him again. You smug-faced crowds with kindling eye who cheer when soldier lads march by, sneak home and pray you'll never know the hell where youth and laughter go.
Just some of the ways that people's background and stories of conscientious objection have inspired action for peace and the environment today. What's your commitment for peace? When was it first crystallized in your mind? Great to see in the chat and on the hashtag CODay2021 many different stories beginning to bubble up. So now a time of reflection. We're going to travel the globe on screen and hear as many names and places where we knew there was a record of conscientious objection before we then finish live at Tavistock Square, where we'll hear nothing but the passing world and our own thoughts. Maybe as we travel, we might be surprised at some of the countries that had conscientious objectors. As we hear them, please remember this. They're not the only one in that country. And there may be countries that are not named because we do not know, and we do not know the names of people we can name. So let's pause and reflect and be thankful for the political, humanitarian, or religious reasons that people around the world, when faced with conflict, decide to stand up for peace.
Algeria, Francois Berriot, who was imprisoned in 1965. Angola, Emmanuel Matondo, a recent conscientious objector. Argentina, Christian LaSalle, one of 5 who made a public presentation of conscientious objection in August 1993. Armenia, Aniak Taliban, imprisoned for 3 years in 2000. Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, Oleg Afanasyan, who was imprisoned for 4 years in 2005. Australia, Charles Edward Martin, imprisoned in 1970. Austria, Josef Mears, imprisoned 5 years as a disobedient soldier in the First World War. Austria at the time of the Anschluss. Franz Jägerstätter, who was beheaded in Berlin on the 9th of August 1943. Austria post-1945, Christian Schwarz, who was refused recognition as a CEO in 1989. Azerbaijan, Samir Husseinov, who was imprisoned in 2007. Belarus, Valentin Gulai, who objected in 2000. Belgium, Jean van Heerden, who was imprisoned in 1950. Bermuda, Rod Eidrit Sterling, who was finally recognized by the Court of Appeal in 1996. Britain, Andrew Henderson, who was imprisoned in 1916, but then died in the influenza epidemic in November 1918. Bulgaria, Kostadin Angelov Kalmarkov, who was imprisoned in 1986. Canada, R.G. Brooks, who was imprisoned for 8 months in 1946. Chile, Javier Garata, who was publicly declared a CEO in the early 2000s. China, Zhu Xiaotong, who was arrested for publicly burning his military uniform in 1989. Colombia, Soy Diego Carafonera, who was the first objector in 1993. Croatia, Tibomir Campanello, who objected in 1999. Cyprus, the Greek part, Theocharis Theocharidis, who was imprisoned for 2 months in 1991. Cyprus, the Turkish part, Murat Kanatli, who was imprisoned for 10 days in 2014. The old Czechoslovakia, Tamaris Kirkernuk, who was imprisoned in 1986. Denmark, Laurits Larsen, who refused in 1962. Egypt, Michael Nabil Sanad, who was the first recorded CEO, imprisoned for 3 years on the 11th of April 2011 for insulting the military. Eritrea, Lagardo Teldemarian, who has been imprisoned continuously since 1994. Finland, Kai Vaininen, who was a total resistor in the 1990s. France, Louis Lequan, who was a pioneer CEO, imprisoned in 1917. Georgia, Kakabi Galashvili, who was imprisoned 16 months in 1996.
Germany, August Dickmann, executed Sachsenhausen, 15th of September 1939. Germany East, Gunther Fritsch, imprisoned 1965. Germany West, Christoph Bosenwein, imprisoned 1986. Greece, Michaelis Maragkakis, imprisoned 26 months in 1988. Hungary, Barna Santos, imprisoned 1986. Isle of Man, Harold Lilly, imprisoned 1916. Israel, Joseph Chavez, imprisoned 3 weeks, 1949. Israel Druze, Salman Salameh, in military detention, 2002. Italy, Pietro Pina, pioneer conscientious objector, imprisoned 1949. Japan, Shuji Hirayama, attempted to refuse orders, World War II. Kazakhstan, Roman Greco, 6 months imprisonment, 1994. Korea South, Chang Sik Kim, brutally beaten over 90 days, then 3 years in prison, 1974. Kyrgyzstan, Dmitry Shukov, detained in psychiatric hospital, 2001. Latvia, Romans Nero, objected in the year 2000. Lithuania, Karolis Podėnas, imprisoned several long terms from 1936. Netherlands, Jacob Finher, imprisoned 3 years, 1950. New Caledonia, Gilbert Bialim Moa, imprisoned 4 months before recognition in 1989. New Zealand, Garth Ballantyne, transported to Britain, then France, sentenced to 5 years imprisonment and mistreated, 1917. Norway, Niels Mitsand, imprisoned 1970. Paraguay, Pablo Maria Angelo Guanes, one of 5 in public conscientious objector presentation, September 1993. Philippines, Lagman, objected 1966. Poland, Darlus Maciek, imprisoned 1 year, 1993. Portugal, Paulo Milhomens de Matros, objected 1977. Puerto Rico, Philip Howard, arrested 1949. Rhodesia, Richard Knottenbelt, imprisoned 5 months, 1977. Roman Empire, Maximilianus, beheaded, Trevesta, North Africa, 12th of March, the year 295. Romania, Alexandru Tion, 5 sentences of 2 years each, 1920s. Russia, Vadim Nazarov, imprisoned 12 months in 1998.
Serbia and Montenegro, Jagoslav Dokic, objected 2005. Serbia, Kosovo, Agron Kurzhaj, resisted Serbian call-up 1990 and pressure to join KLO in 1998. Singapore, Lagai, Siu Chiet, second sentence of 2 years military detention, 1997. Slovakia, Martin Bednar, imprisoned 1 year in 1997. Somalia, Saeed Mohammed, imprisoned 1984. South Africa, Richard Steele, imprisoned 1 year 1980. Southwest Africa, Rashid Ruinazi, refused 1987. Spain, Jose Luis Pepe Puenza, imprisoned 1971. Spain, the Basque Country, Alberto Estefania, imprisoned 4 months in 2000. Spain, Canary Islands, Rafael Vallejon, imprisoned 1 year 1993. Spain, Catalonia, Francesco Montenegro, imprisoned 2 years, 5 months and 1 day in 1995. Sweden, Per Johannes Klasse, Alternative Service, 1980s. Switzerland, Joseph Bentz, imprisoned 1950. Taiwan, Shi Ming-tae, imprisoned 1986. Thailand, Kuhn Netiwit Shoti Fat Faisal, declared himself as CO June 2016. Turkey, Mehmet Bal, military detention 2002. Turkmenistan, Kervin Zakirov, sentenced to 9 years in labor colony 1999. Ukraine, Gleba Melchev, sought conscientious objector asylum in Latvia 1993. USA, Cyrus Guernsey Pringle, drafted into the Union Army, held in guardroom, but eventually freed in 1863. USSR, Chechnya, Anatoly Zuk, detained in psychiatric hospital 1988. USSR, Estonia, Erkki Luik, first political CO, 18 months forced labor 1989. USSR, Kyrgyzstan, Andrei Bill, imprisoned 1984. USSR, Moldova, Nikolai Ryshkov, imprisoned 1986. USSR, Russia, Dmitry Argonov, distributed leaflets explaining objection 1985. USSR, Ukraine, Sergei Osnach, 18 months forced labor 1991. Venezuela, Rafael Uzcategui, objected 1990s. Yugoslavia, former Ljubomir Petric, imprisoned 8 years in 1963. Yugoslavia, latter Bojan Alexov, discharged from army as mentally unstable after refusing to recite civil war in 1991.
So there we have it. We've sung, we've laughed, we've shared memories, we've travelled the globe. We've paused for just that one moment in a world of conflict to remember those who stand up for peace. Whilst it's not the only event today, got just enough time to get some tea before at 6:30, Multi-Faith Leicester hold a international gathering online, and the Anglican Pacifist Fellowship hold a time of music, poems, prayers and speeches, including hearing from 2 Anglican Pacifist Fellowship members who were COs during the Vietnam War at 8:00 in the evening. There are, of course, many other events going on all around the world. We'd encourage you to find out and ask your friends about it. But today has been put together by a wide range of people. You've just seen me. Of course, we need to say thank you to Jeff Tibbs at the Peace Pledge Union, whose digital stitching and organising has ensured all of the videos, etc., have been in the right place at the right time, and has worked quietly and diligently to ensure we've got the people we need sharing those vital stories. There's a group that gathers, the Fellowship of Reconciliation, who I work for, and many other organisations sit round. But it's been a time of change this year, so we just wanted to say thank you publicly to a few of its members. To Edna Matheson, who stood back from the event this year after leading the campaign to get the CO stone installed and then following it through to ensure that there wasn't just a stone, but an annual act of commemoration. It was because of her inspiring and pioneering push that we're here today. Her work was assisted and enhanced by Dennis Coble, who's also stood back. And of course, we're always grateful to Bill Hetherington, who every year has been a long-term archivist and historical support for this event, keeping us both historically correct and that long list of conscientious objectors around the world up to date. As I've mentioned at different points, and as you've heard in the videos, there are both religious, political, and humanitarian reasons that people get involved, but we also just wish to give a nod to Marigold Bentley, who's due to retire as head of Quaker Peace and Social Witness after 30 years of work there next week. Her and the Quaker contribution to peace and justice is substantial. So while we know that the Quaker support for the event today will continue, we'll miss her input, ideas, and connecting. Finally, we want to thank each and every one of you. Over 148 people have gathered at some point online. This event and a shared wish to push for peace in a broken and violent world is absolutely vital. It's your fellowship and your solidarity that ensures conscientious objection and standing up for peace are not just issues in the history book, but alive, vibrant, and changing the world today. So we conclude with our final song, which has a nice graph on it showing all the different organisations that have helped put today together. It's from Sue Gilmurray and reminds us to keep working together, because if we don't do that, the hope that peace brings may be lost. So until next year, on Sunday, the 15th of May, 2022, when hopefully some of us may gather in Tavistock Square, in Edinburgh, in all sorts of places to remember conscientious objectors. Let's be sung out by Sue as she reminds us of the ones who say no.
Ask people what are their hopes for the future. Likelihood is they will say they want peace. Sadly deplore all the world's many conflicts. Look for a time when they finally cease. Yet these same people will talk of past glories, praise our brave armies with as traitors, punished for simply refusing to kill. Proud politicians and posturing generals stand on their dung hills and mightily crow. If they were stripped of their plumage, we'd see them shamed by the fate of the ones who said no. Shamed by the fate of the ones who said no. Ask people what are their hopes for the future. Likelihood is they will say they want peace. Yet in their faith upon weapons and armies, even as damage and danger increase, look back to those who have dared to be different. Over the world let their clear courage flow. Armies unarmed, let it swell into millions. Cry yes to peace with the ones who said no. Cry yes to peace with the ones who said no.